I traced the edge of the bandage on my neck absent-mindedly as Timothy's SUV wound its way up the mountain road. The bite mark beneath still throbbed dully, a constant reminder of how close we'd come to disaster only 2 nights ago. Seraphine. The name alone sent a shiver down my spine. She'd been beautiful, all curves and silky hair, but her eyes had been cold as ice when she lunged at me outside our hotel after the wedding reception. Timothy had reacted instantly, shifting mid-air to intercept the attack, but not before Seraphine's teeth sank into my neck for 1 terrifying second. The pain had been excruciating, like fire racing through my veins, but Timothy had torn Seraphine away and driven her off with a snarl that promised death if she ever returned. Now here we were, driving toward Timothy's pack estate, my new home, and I couldn't help but wonder what changes that bite would bring. Would I become like them? A werewolf? The thought both thrilled and terrified me. "You're quiet," Timothy said, reaching over to squeeze my hand. His touch grounded me instantly. "Just nervous," I admitted with a small smile. "They'll love you," he repeated, for what felt like the 100th time since we'd left the city. I nodded, but said nothing else. I knew some of his pack would resent a human Luna, especially one who'd been forcibly marked by an enemy alpha's daughter. But Timothy had assured me that his pack would accept me once they saw how strong I was, how much I loved him. The trees thinned suddenly, revealing a sprawling stone mansion nestled among towering pines. A crowd of people had gathered on the front steps, maybe 20 in total, including several children who waved excitedly as the SUV pulled up. Timothy parked and came around to open my door. When he offered his hand, I took it gratefully and stepped out onto gravel that crunched under my boots. "Alpha! Luna!" A tall woman with short dark hair and sharp brown eyes stepped forward first. She wore combat boots and cargo pants, but smiled warmly as she approached. "Sarah," Timothy greeted her with a nod. "This is my mate Martha." Sarah extended a hand, but then seemed to think better of it and pulled me into a quick hug instead. "It's great to finally meet you," she said sincerely. "You too," I replied, surprised by the genuine welcome. One by one, Timothy introduced the others. Agnes, a plump older woman who was the pack cook. Derek, a tall man who looks like a warrior with piercing blue eyes who gave only a curt nod. Ethan, a teenager who blushed when he shook my hand. And many others whose names blurred together in my overwhelmed mind. As we moved through introductions, I noticed something odd. My senses seemed heightened. I could smell each person distinctly. Sarah carried a hint of lavender soap. Derek smelled like pine and leather. Agnes exuded aromas of cinnamon and roasted meat from the kitchen. And when little Emily whispered to her mother about how pretty Luna was, I heard it clearly despite being several feet away. "Is this because of the bite?" I glanced at Timothy, but he was busy greeting an elderly man named Henry. I decided not to mention it yet. Perhaps it was just nerves. When the introductions were finished, Timothy led me inside through massive wooden doors into a grand foyer with marble floors and a sweeping staircase. "Our room is upstairs," he said, guiding me up the steps with a hand on the small of my back. The master suite took my breath away. It was easily twice the size of my old apartment, with a king-sized bed draped in silken sheets and floor-to-ceiling windows offering an unobstructed view of the forest beyond. "Home sweet home," Timothy murmured as he wrapped his arms around me from behind and nuzzled my neck just below the bandage. I leaned back against him with a contented sigh. "It's beautiful." His hands slid down to cup my breasts through the thin fabric of my dress, while his lips trailed kisses along my jawline until they captured mine in a searing kiss that left us both breathless. When we finally broke apart for air, Timothy's eyes darkened with desire. "I need you now," he growled. He turned me around gently and began undressing me slowly, savouring each inch of skin revealed. First he slid the straps of my sundress off my shoulders, letting it pool at my feet. Then he unhooked my bra and tossed it aside before kneeling to remove my panties. As he stood back up, his gaze fell on the bandage covering Seraphine's bite mark on my neck. A low growl rumbled in his chest as he carefully peeled away the adhesive and gauze. The wound was still red and angry-looking, 2 puncture marks surrounded by bruising, but it had started to heal thanks to Timothy's special salve applied earlier. "Mine," Timothy growled possessively, before leaning forward to lick gently at the bite marks. "You are mine, Martha." I shivered at both his touch and his tone, a mixture of tenderness and primal possessiveness that made heat pool between my legs. Without warning, he sank his teeth into the same spot, hard enough to break skin anew, and sucked at the blood that welled up. Pain laced with pleasure shot through my body, making me gasp and arch against him. He lapped at the wound soothingly, then lifted his head to look deep into my eyes. "Now everyone will know who you belong to," he rasped, before capturing my lips in a fierce kiss that tasted of copper and need. Then he lifted me effortlessly into his arms and carried me toward one of those large windows where he pressed my back against the cool glass pane. "Timothy," I gasped, when he set me down just long enough to kick off his shoes and strip off his pants and boxers in one swift motion. "Someone might see—" "Let them see," he growled possessively, as he freed his already rock-hard cock and hoisted me up again so that my legs wrapped around his waist. I felt the thick head prodding at my entrance, already slick with arousal, and then he was pushing inside, stretching me deliciously until he filled me completely. "Fuck!" he groaned against my neck as he began moving immediately, hard, relentless thrusts that had the window rattling behind us with each powerful snap of his hips. I clung to his shoulders, nails digging into his skin as pleasure built quickly within my core. I didn't care if the whole pack watched. All that mattered was feeling connected like this after the long drive and tension of the past few days. "You feel so good," Timothy grunted between thrusts. "So fucking tight for me." I could only moan in response as he hit that spot deep inside that made stars burst behind my eyelids. "Come for me, baby," he commanded huskily, while one hand snaked between our bodies to rub circles over my clit. That was all it took. I screamed his name as an intense orgasm ripped through my body, causing every muscle to clench around him tightly. That sent him over edge. With a roar, he buried himself hilt deep inside me and spilled hot seed deep within, while continuing shallow thrusts prolonging both our pleasure until finally stilling, except for ragged breaths mingling together in air thick with scent, sex, sweat, love. We stayed locked together for several moments before Timothy gently lowered my feet to the floor, but kept his arms wrapped around my waist, holding me close against his chest, where his heart still raced from exertion. After catching his breath, he kissed my forehead tenderly, then whispered, "That's just beginning." I smiled back, still trembling from the aftershocks. Yes, indeed, our new life together had begun. Once we cleaned up and dressed in fresh clothes, a simple blouse and jeans, I followed Timothy downstairs for dinner, feeling sated yet slightly sore between my thighs, a secret smile on my lips. The dining hall was large enough to seat 50 people comfortably, but tonight only about 20 were present, the core members of Timothy's pack. Conversation died down when Timothy entered with me at his side. "Everyone," Timothy announced, "please welcome your Luna properly." A chorus of "Welcome Luna" echoed around the room, some enthusiastic, others more reserved. I smiled and nodded thanks as we took our seats at the head of the table. Throughout dinner, I tried to engage those seated near me. Sarah to my left was friendly and full of stories about pack life. Derek sat across from us and said little except occasional grunts when addressed directly. But I noticed something else. My senses seemed even sharper now. Smells overwhelmed me. Roast beef, juicy carrots, freshly baked bread, and I could hear whispers from the far end of the table where two women were discussing whether I would last as Luna, because I was human. I frowned but pushed aside, focusing instead on conversation with Sarah, who seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me. When dessert was served, a decadent chocolate cake, I finally worked up the courage to ask Derek about himself. "So, Derek," I began politely, "how long have you been part of this pack?" He looked up from his plate and narrowed his eyes. "Since birth," he replied curtly, before returning his attention to his food. Undeterred, I pressed on. "Timothy speaks highly of your fighting skills." That earned another glance, this time surprise flickering across his features before they hardened again. "I do my job," he muttered. Sarah shot me an apologetic look, but said nothing else. After dinner, most adults dispersed, while children ran off to play outside under the watchful eyes of elders. Timothy excused himself briefly to speak with some pack members about patrol schedules. I found myself wandering out onto the balcony overlooking the gardens where Sarah joined me moments later. "Don't mind Derek," Sarah said softly, leaning against the railing and watching fireflies dance among the flowers below us. "He doesn't like me," I observed quietly. Sarah sighed heavily before answering. "He lost his brother recently, killed by Bloodridge wolves during an ambush while Timothy was away building alliances in the city." She paused, then added gently, "It's not personal. He just needs time." I nodded understandingly, though it still stung being treated coldly by someone who clearly meant much to Timothy's pack. As if sensing my thoughts, Sarah squeezed my shoulder reassuringly. "Give him time, he'll come around." We chatted a few more minutes until Timothy returned, wrapping an arm around my waist possessively. "Ready for bed, my love?" I nodded, allowing him to lead me back upstairs where we made love again. This time slowly, sweetly, whispering promises to each other until sleep claimed us both. But even as I drifted off, nestled safely in Timothy's arms, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. A tingling sensation beneath the now unbandaged bite mark, almost like an itch but deeper than skin level. Exhaustion soon overcame any worries, leaving only dreams filled with glowing golden eyes watching from the shadows. I woke to the warm press of Timothy's body against mine, his arm draped heavily over my waist. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting golden patterns across the rumpled sheets. For a moment I just lay there, listening to the steady rhythm of his breathing and the distant sounds of the forest outside. My body ached pleasantly from last night's activities, a reminder of how thoroughly my mate had claimed me. As I shifted to sit up, Timothy stirred, his eyes fluttering open. A lazy smile spread across his face. "Morning, beautiful," he murmured, pulling me back down for a kiss that quickly turned heated. His hand slid under my nightgown, fingers brushing over my already sensitive flesh. I moaned into his mouth, but then pushed gently against his chest. "As much as I'd love to continue, I think your pack would like to see their alpha at some point today." He growled playfully, nipping at my lower lip. "They can wait." But he released me with a sigh and sat up, running a hand through his tousled hair. "You're right. Duty calls." After showering together, which nearly turned into another round, we dressed and headed downstairs. The mansion was already bustling with activity. Pack members moved about with purpose, some carrying baskets of laundry, others heading out toward the training grounds. Many nodded respectfully as we passed, though I caught a few wary glances directed at me. In the dining hall, Agnes had laid out a spread of breakfast foods, eggs, bacon, fresh fruit, and fluffy pancakes. The aromas hit me like a wave, making my stomach growl loudly. Timothy chuckled and led me to the head table. "Eat up," he said, piling food onto my plate. "You'll need your strength." I rolled my eyes but dug in eagerly. Everything tasted incredible. The eggs were perfectly seasoned, the bacon crisp, the fruit sweet and juicy. As I ate, I couldn't help but notice how intense each flavour was, as if my taste buds had been dialed up to 11. Was that another effect of the bite? I glanced at Timothy, but he was deep in conversation with a pack member who had approached him about some border issue. After breakfast, Timothy kissed me on the cheek. "I have to attend some alpha business. Sarah will show you around the estate." He nodded toward the doorway where Sarah stood waiting, dressed in her usual cargo pants and combat boots, a friendly smile on her face. "Have fun," he whispered before striding off. I joined Sarah, who greeted me with a nod. "Ready for the grand tour, Luna?" "Please, call me Martha," I said. "And yes, I'm ready." We started with the mansion itself. Sarah showed me the library, a cozy room lined with bookshelves and comfortable armchairs, the formal living room, the study where Timothy often worked, and the kitchen where Agnes reigned supreme. The older woman gave me a warm hug and pressed a muffin into my hand, for energy. As we moved outside, the morning air was crisp and clean. Sarah led me through the gardens, pointing out various herbs and vegetables grown for both culinary and medicinal purposes. The scents were overwhelming, Roses, lavender, mint, damp earth. I inhaled deeply, feeling almost dizzy with the intensity. "You okay?" Sarah asked, noticing my slight stumble. "Yeah," I said quickly, "just taking it all in." She gave me a knowing look but didn't comment. Next we visited the training grounds, a large open area with obstacle courses, punching bags, and a sparring ring. Several warriors were practicing hand-to-hand combat. Others were shifting into wolf form and back again. I watched in awe as a man's bones cracked and reshaped into a sleek brown wolf within seconds. "That never gets old," Sarah said with a grin. "Come on, I'll introduce you." We approached a group of warriors who paused their training to greet us. Most were friendly enough, though I sensed some underlying tension. One young woman named Kara seemed particularly interested in me. "So you're really human?" she asked bluntly. "Kara!" Sarah scolded. I held up a hand. "It's okay. Yes, I'm human. For now, at least." I touched the bite mark on my neck self-consciously. Kara's eyes widened. "Seraphine bit you? That must have hurt like hell." "It did," I admitted. She shook her head. "Well, welcome to the pack. If you need any help with training once you shift, let me know." I thanked her, and we moved on. Sarah took me to see the stables where they kept horses, then to a small cottage that served as the pack's infirmary. By the time we circled back to the mansion for lunch, my feet were sore but my mind was buzzing with all the new information. Lunch was a more casual affair than dinner had been, with people coming and going as they pleased. I sat with Sarah and a few others at a long table in the dining hall. Derek was there too, sitting at the far end, his expression unreadable. Conversation flowed easily around me. I learned that Sarah had been part of the pack since childhood and had trained as a warrior under Timothy's father. She was fiercely loyal and had become Timothy's right-hand woman after his father's death. Halfway through the meal, I overheard 2 pack members at a neighbouring table whispering about Bloodridge scouts spotted near the northern border. My enhanced hearing picked up every word. 3 of them, just watching us. "Victor's testing our defences again. The Alpha needs to do something before they get bolder." I turned to Sarah. "Who's Victor?" Her face darkened. "Victor is the Alpha of the Bloodridge pack. He used to be allies with Timothy's father, but after the old Alpha died, Victor wanted Timothy to marry his daughter Seraphine to unite the packs. Timothy refused, and Victor hasn't taken it well. There's been tension ever since." "And Seraphine?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Sarah's jaw tightened. "She's just as bad as her father, maybe worse. She's obsessed with Timothy and will stop at nothing to have him." I shivered at the memory of those cold eyes and sharp teeth sinking into my neck. After lunch, Timothy found me in the library reading a book about pack history. He wrapped his arms around me from behind and nuzzled my neck. "How was your tour?" "Informative," I said, leaning into him. "I heard about the Bloodridge scouts." He sighed. "Yes, we're dealing with it, but I don't want you to worry. You're safe here." I turned to face him. "I'm not worried about me. I'm worried about you, about all of you. I want to help." He cupped my cheek. "You will, in time. For now, just focus on adjusting to pack life." His thumb brushed over my lower lip. "I have something special planned for tonight." "Oh?" I raised an eyebrow. He grinned. "Wear something comfortable and meet me outside after dinner." True to his word, after dinner, Timothy led me by hand into the forest behind the mansion. The sun had just set, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. We walked along a narrow path illuminated by fireflies and the soft glow of the rising moon. "Where are we going?" I asked. "You'll see," he replied mysteriously. After about 15 minutes, the trees opened up to reveal a secluded lake. The water was still and clear, reflecting the stars above. Crickets chirped, and somewhere an owl hooted. "It's beautiful," I breathed. Timothy pulled me close. "Not as beautiful as you." He kissed me softly, then stepped back and began to undress. I watched as he stripped off his shirt, revealing his sculpted chest and abs. My mouth went dry. He kicked off his shoes and pants, standing naked before me in the moonlight. His cock was already half hard, and I licked my lips unconsciously. "Your turn," he said huskily. I quickly shed my clothes, feeling the cool night air on my skin. Timothy's gaze raked over me appreciatively. "Come here," he commanded. I walked into his arms, and he kissed me deeply, his hands roaming over my back and down to cup my arse. He lifted me effortlessly, and I wrapped my legs around his waist as he carried me into the lake. The water was cool but not cold, lapping at our bodies as we waded deeper. When we were waist deep, Timothy lowered me until I could stand on my own. He kissed my neck, his lips trailing down to my collarbone, while his hands found my breasts, kneading and pinching my nipples until I gasped. "Timothy," I moaned. He captured one nipple in his mouth, sucking hard as his fingers slipped between my legs, teasing my clit. I arched into him, desperate for more. "Please," I begged. He chuckled darkly and lifted me again, positioning me so that his cock pressed against my entrance. Then he slowly lowered me onto him, inch by glorious inch. "Fuck," he groaned as I sheathed him fully. I clung to his shoulders as he began to move, thrusting upward while holding my hips steady. The water added a sensual slipperiness to our movements, each thrust sending ripples across the surface. He kissed me fiercely, his tongue mimicking the rhythm of his hips. I could feel my orgasm building rapidly, coiling tight in my belly. "That's it, baby," he encouraged. "Come for me." His thumb found my clit and rubbed circles just as he angled his thrusts to hit that sweet spot inside me. With a cry, I shattered, my inner walls clamping down on him like a vice. Timothy growled and buried his face in my neck as he followed me over the edge, filling me with his hot release. We stayed like that for a while, panting and kissing gently as we floated in the afterglow. Eventually we made our way back to shore and dried off with our clothes before dressing again. As we walked back hand in hand, I felt completely at peace. That peace was shattered when we reached the mansion and saw Derek waiting for us on the porch, his expression grim. "Alpha," he said urgently, "we have a problem." Timothy's demeanor shifted instantly from relaxed lover to authoritative alpha. "What is it?" "Bloodridge wolves attacked one of our patrols on the eastern border. 2 injured, 1 seriously." Timothy's jaw clenched. "I'll be right there." He turned to me and kissed my forehead. "Go inside and get some rest. I'll be back as soon as I can." I nodded, worry gnawing at my gut as I watched him stride off with Derek into the night. Alone in our bedroom, I couldn't shake the feeling that things were about to get much worse. I woke to an empty bed again. Timothy had been gone most of the night dealing with the Bloodridge attack, and though he'd slipped back into bed at some point before dawn, he was already up and about by the time I opened my eyes. The sheets beside me were still warm, so he couldn't have left long ago. As I sat up, a wave of nausea hit me so hard I had to clamp a hand over my mouth and rush to the bathroom. I barely made it to the toilet before emptying what little contents were in my stomach. After flushing, I leaned against the cool tile wall and took deep breaths. This is new, I thought. Maybe it's just stress. But then I remembered that my period was late, only by a few days, but still. A flutter of hope mixed with anxiety bloomed in my chest. Could I be pregnant? The idea sent a thrill through me despite the queasiness. I brushed my teeth and splashed water on my face before heading downstairs in search of Timothy. The mansion was quiet. Most pack members were probably already out on their daily tasks. I found him in his study, hunched over maps spread across his desk. He looked up when I entered, concern etching his features as he took in my pale complexion. "Martha, are you okay?" I forced a smile. "Just a little morning sickness, maybe." I watched his reaction carefully. His eyes widened for a fraction of a second before he schooled his expression into something neutral. "Morning sickness? You think you might be pregnant?" "Possibly." I stepped closer and placed a hand on his arm. "It's too early to be sure, but my period is late and I feel off." He pulled me into a hug, his scent calming me instantly. "We should get you a test to confirm." I nodded against his chest. "I'll ask Sarah to get one from town." Timothy kissed the top of my head. "Do that, and whatever the result, we'll handle it together." I left his study feeling lighter. As much as I wanted a child with Timothy, part of me worried about bringing a baby into this dangerous world of rival packs and violence. But if it was true, we would protect our little one with everything we had. Sarah was easy to find. She was in the training yard overseeing some of the younger warriors. When I explained what I needed, her eyebrows shot up, but she quickly agreed. "I'll go right now," she said. "Be back in an hour." True to her word, Sarah returned with a discreet paper bag containing 2 pregnancy tests. I took them upstairs and locked myself in the bathroom. My hands shook as I unwrapped the first test and followed the instructions. The wait felt interminable. Finally, I looked. 1 line. Not pregnant. Maybe it's too early, I told myself. I took the second test just to be sure. Same result. Disappointment washed over me, but also confusion. If not pregnancy, then what was causing these symptoms? The heightened senses, the nausea. Could it be something else? Shoving those thoughts aside for now, I decided to keep busy. Helping in the kitchen seemed like a good distraction. Agnes always welcomed an extra pair of hands. Agnes was bustling around when I entered, chopping vegetables for lunch. She beamed at me. "Luna, what brings you to my domain?" "I thought I could help," I said, rolling up my sleeves. "Give me something to do." She eyed me skeptically, but handed me a knife and pointed to a pile of carrots. "You can start with these." I began chopping, focusing on the rhythmic motion to clear my mind. Agnes chatted away about pack gossip while I half listened. My thoughts kept drifting back to Timothy and the Bloodridge threat. Suddenly, a sharp pain lanced through my finger. I'd sliced right into it with the knife. "Ouch!" I dropped the knife and clutched my hand. Agnes gasped, "Oh no! Quick, let me see!" But before she could even move toward me, an excruciating burning sensation spread from the cut up my arm. It felt like fire racing through my veins. I doubled over, gasping for breath as my muscles seized uncontrollably. "Alpha!" Agnes shouted as she rushed out of the kitchen. I collapsed to the floor, convulsing violently. Every nerve felt like it was being dipped in acid. My vision blurred. I could hear shouting and footsteps pounding toward me. Then strong arms lifted me. Timothy's scent enveloped me even through the agony. He carried me upstairs while barking orders at someone behind us. By the time he laid me on our bed, my whole body was shaking uncontrollably. He rummaged through a drawer and produced a small jar of salve. With gentle hands he applied it to the cut on my finger. Almost immediately, the burning began to subside. He held me close until the convulsions stopped and I could breathe normally again. Tears streamed down my face from both pain and confusion. What was that?" I croaked. Timothy stroked my hair soothingly. "Silver poisoning," he said grimly. "It's deadly to werewolves." I stared at him blankly. "But I'm not a werewolf." He sighed heavily and cupped my cheek. "Martha, Seraphine's bite started your transformation. You're becoming one of us." My heart pounded against my ribs. "What? Why didn't you tell me?" "I wasn't sure if it would take," he admitted. "Some humans bitten by werewolves don't turn. They just die from the infection. But your symptoms, heightened senses, nausea, those are signs that your body is adapting to the change. All this time I'd thought it might be pregnancy. But no, it was something far more life-altering. I was turning into a werewolf. Panic rose in my throat. What does this mean? Will I be like you? Will I shift? He nodded. Yes. The first full moon is in 2 weeks. That's when you'll experience your first shift. I swallowed hard. The idea of transforming into a wolf was terrifying, yet exhilarating at the same time. Timothy must have seen the conflict on my face, because he pulled me into his lap and kissed my forehead tenderly. "I'll be with you every step of the way," he promised. His warmth and steady heartbeat calmed me somewhat. Then another thought struck me. "Does this mean we can't have children?" He chuckled softly. "No, we can still have children. Werewolves are fertile too. Very fertile," he added. But then his expression turned serious again. "But we need to be careful during your transition period. Your body is under a lot of stress right now." I nodded slowly as everything sank in. I wasn't pregnant. I was becoming a werewolf because of Seraphine's bite. Part of me felt relieved that there was an explanation for all these strange changes. Another part mourned the loss of normalcy. Timothy brushed away my tears with his thumbs before capturing my lips in a soft kiss that quickly deepened into something more passionate. "Let me show you how much I love you," he murmured against my skin as he laid me back on the bed. His hands were gentle as they removed my clothes piece by piece. Each touch conveyed reverence and adoration rather than urgency or dominance like before. He took his time exploring every inch of my body with kisses and licks, until I squirmed beneath him begging for release. When he finally entered me, it was slow and deep, a joining meant to comfort rather than conquer, and we moved together in perfect harmony until waves of pleasure crashed over us both simultaneously. Afterward, we lay tangled together under blankets, while twilight painted our room orange and pink hues through windows left open slightly, letting cool breeze caress our sweat-slicked skin. Timothy traced idle patterns on my shoulder blade as we talked about what lay ahead. Training sessions so I could learn control over my new abilities, preparing for my first shift, dealing with potential threats from Bloodridge now that Victor knew about me. But despite all uncertainties, one thing remained clear. We would face them together as mates united by love stronger than any silver blade could sever. The next morning dawned clear and bright. I woke before Timothy for once, watching him sleep peacefully beside me. His face was relaxed in slumber, the usual lines of stress smoothed away. I traced a finger lightly over his stubbled jaw, marveling at how lucky I was to have this man as my mate. He stirred and opened his eyes, a slow smile spreading across his face when he saw me watching him. "Good morning," he murmured huskily, before pulling me into a kiss that quickly turned heated. When we finally came up for air, he nipped at my lower lip playfully. "We have training today." I groaned but nodded. As much as I wanted to stay in bed all day with him, I knew I needed to learn how to defend myself, especially now that I was turning into a werewolf. After breakfast, we headed to the training grounds where several pack members were already sparring or lifting weights. They paused when we approached, giving respectful nods to Timothy and curious glances at me. Timothy led me to an open area away from prying eyes, but still within view of everyone else, no doubt wanting them to see their Luna learning combat skills. "First things first," he said, adopting an instructor's tone. "We'll start with basic strikes and blocks." He demonstrated a jab-cross combination followed by an uppercut, each move fluid and powerful, even without shifting. I mimicked him as best I could, but felt clumsy compared to his gracefulness. "Don't lock your elbows," he corrected gently, while adjusting my stance from behind so that his chest pressed against my back intimately enough to send shivers down my spine despite seriousness of situation. We continued like that for about an hour, punches, kicks, blocks, dodges, until sweat dripped down both our faces despite the cool breeze blowing through the trees surrounding the compound. Other warriors had gathered to watch, some openly skeptical, whispering amongst themselves, while others offered encouragement occasionally, calling out tips which Timothy either acknowledged or ignored depending on their usefulness. My muscles screamed protest with each new movement, but determination kept me going. I noticed Derek among the onlookers, his arms crossed over his chest, a frown etched on his face. He didn't say anything, just watched with an unreadable expression. During a water break, sitting on a bench together and drinking from bottles provided by Agnes, who had also brought snacks, I overheard two pack members talking near the edge of the woods. Thanks to my heightened hearing, a side effect of the transformation, I could make out their hushed conversation clearly. "Scouts again last night," one said lowly. "Victor's testing our defences." The other grunted. "Alpha needs to strike back hard, show them we're not weak." Their words sent a chill down my spine. I glanced at Timothy, but he was scanning the training area, seemingly lost in thought. I decided to ask him about it later. When we resumed training, Timothy decided to move on to sparring. "We'll go slow," he said, positioning himself in front of me. "Try to land a hit on me." I squared up, focusing on his movements. He moved with such ease that it was intimidating, but I lunged forward with a right hook. He dodged effortlessly and tapped my side. Again. We continued like that for several minutes, me attacking and him deflecting or dodging. Frustration built inside me. I couldn't even touch him. Then, as I swung a kick aimed at his midsection, he sidestepped, but I anticipated it and quickly changed direction, my fist connecting with his shoulder. It wasn't a hard hit, more of a glancing blow, but it surprised both of us. Timothy's eyebrows shot up, and a proud grin spread across his face. "Good, that's using your head." From the sidelines, I heard murmurs of approval from some warriors. Even Derek gave a slight nod before turning away. After another half hour, Timothy called it quits. "You did well today," he said, wiping sweat from his brow. "Let's head back and clean up." We walked side by side toward the mansion, my body aching but my spirit lifted by his praise. As soon as we entered our bedroom, I couldn't hold back my questions any longer. "Timothy, I overheard some warriors talking about Bloodridge scouts near the border last night. What's going on?" He sighed and ran a hand through his hair. "Come on, let's get cleaned up first. We can talk in the shower." He started stripping off his sweaty clothes, and I followed suit, eager to wash away the grime and sweat. Once naked, we stepped into the spacious walk-in shower. Timothy turned on the water, adjusting it to a warm temperature before pulling me under the spray with him. As the water cascaded over us, he began soaping my back, his hands massaging my tired muscles. I leaned into his touch, but my mind was still on the scouts. "Tell me about Victor," I said softly. Timothy's hands stilled for a moment before continuing their ministrations. "Victor is the alpha of the Bloodridge pack. He and my father were close friends once, almost like brothers. They even discussed merging our packs through marriage, me and Seraphine." I tensed at the mention of Seraphine's name. Timothy sensed it and wrapped his arms around me from behind, kissing my shoulder. "After my father died," he continued, "Victor expected me to honor that arrangement. But I refused because I didn't love Seraphine and because I didn't trust Victor's intentions. He wanted control over our pack, to absorb us into his territory. When I turned him down, he took it as a personal insult. Since then, there have been skirmishes along the border, but lately they've become more frequent and brazen." I turned around to face him, water streaming down my face. "And Seraphine? Why did she bite me?" Anger flashed in Timothy's eyes. "She's obsessed with me. She thought if she marked you as hers, or rather, if she claimed you as a way to get to me, it would force my hand, but she underestimated us." I placed a hand on his chest, feeling his rapid heartbeat. "We'll get through this," I said firmly. He cupped my face with both hands and kissed me deeply, pouring all his fear and passion into that kiss. When we broke apart, his eyes were dark with desire. "Enough talk," he growled, pressing me against the tiled wall. The cool surface contrasted sharply with the heat of his body. His mouth descended on mine hungrily, while his hands roamed over my wet skin, squeezing my breasts and pinching my nipples until they pebbled under his touch. I moaned into his mouth, arching into him. He broke the kiss to trail hot kisses down my neck, sucking at the sensitive spot where his mark lay. The sensation sent jolts of pleasure straight to my core. "Timothy?" I gasped as he dropped to his knees before me. He spread my legs and buried his face between them without warning, his tongue lapping at my folds with expert precision. I cried out, tangling my fingers in his hair as he devoured me. He focused on my clit, flicking it rapidly while 2 fingers slipped inside me, curling upward to hit that sweet spot. My knees buckled, but he held me up with one strong arm around my waist. "Come for me, baby," he commanded against my sensitive flesh. And I did, with a scream that echoed off the shower walls, my body convulsing as wave after wave of ecstasy crashed over me. Before I could recover, Timothy stood and lifted me easily, wrapping my legs around his waist. He aligned himself at my entrance and thrust upward in one smooth motion, filling me completely. "Fuck, you're so tight," he groaned, starting a relentless pace. The water sluiced over us, making our skin slick as he pounded into me. Each thrust sent sparks of pleasure through my already oversensitive body. I clung to his shoulders, meeting him thrust for thrust. "You're mine," he growled possessively, nipping at my collarbone. "Yours," I agreed breathlessly. He reached between us to rub my clit in time with his thrusts, sending me spiraling toward another orgasm. This one built slowly, but then hit me like a freight train, making me clench around him so tightly that he lost control. With a roar, Timothy buried himself deep and came, his hot seed filling me as we both shuddered through our releases. We stayed like that for a long moment, panting heavily, until he carefully set me down on shaky legs. After washing each other thoroughly and a few more stolen kisses, we stepped out of the shower and toweled off. As we dressed, Timothy pulled me close again. No matter what happens with Victor, we face it together. I nodded, resting my head against his chest. Together. The following evening, Timothy called a pack meeting. As the sun dipped below the horizon, members gathered in the great hall, a vast room with high ceilings and walls adorned with tapestries depicting the pack's history. Long wooden tables had been pushed aside to make space for rows of chairs facing a raised platform where Timothy stood, his presence commanding respect. I entered quietly, taking a seat at the front beside Sarah. My stomach churned with nerves. Though I was Luna, I still felt like an outsider among these people who had known each other for years. I could sense eyes on me, hear whispered comments that my heightened hearing picked up all too clearly. "She doesn't belong here," someone muttered. "Human Luna," another scoffed. I clenched my fists, determined not to let it get to me. Timothy caught my eye and gave me a reassuring nod before calling the meeting to order. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his voice carrying easily across the room. "I've gathered you to discuss the recent incursions by Bloodridge wolves. They've been testing our borders, and last night they attacked one of our patrols, injuring 2 warriors. A murmur of anger rippled through the crowd. Timothy held up a hand for silence. "I know many of you are eager for retaliation, but we must be strategic. Victor wants to provoke us into a full-scale war. We need to strengthen our defenses and increase patrols. I'll be assigning new pairs to guard the perimeter." He continued outlining his plans, but I noticed Derek shifting restlessly in his seat near the back. When Timothy opened the floor for questions, Derek stood abruptly. "Alpha," he said, his tone respectful but edged with something else. "With all due respect, why is she here?" He pointed directly at me. "This is pack business. She's not one of us." The room fell silent. My cheeks burned, but I kept my head high. Timothy's eyes flashed dangerously. "Martha is my mate, and you're Luna. She has every right to be here." Derek didn't back down. "She's human. She can't possibly understand what we're facing. Her presence compromises our security. What if she leaks information?" Gasps echoed around us. I could feel Timothy's anger rising like a storm about to break, but before he could respond, Sarah shot to her feet. "That's enough, Derek," she snapped. "Martha may be new, but she's proven herself willing to learn and fight alongside us. She's also going through the transformation because of Seraphine's bite. Soon she'll be one of us fully. Until then, she deserves our respect as Luna." Several heads nodded in agreement. Others looked skeptical but remained silent. Derek's jaw tightened, but he sat down without another word. Timothy took a deep breath, clearly struggling to control his temper. "Anyone else?" When no one spoke, he dismissed the meeting. As people filed out, I felt a mix of gratitude toward Sarah and resentment toward Derek. I needed to clear the air with him, if only to understand why he harbored such animosity. I waited until most had left before approaching Derek, who was lingering near the doorway. "Derek, can we talk?" I asked softly. He glanced at me with icy blue eyes, nodded and followed me to a quiet alcove off the main hall. "What do you want?" he asked bluntly. I took a steadying breath. "I want to know why you hate me so much." He crossed his arms over his chest. "I don't hate you. I just think you're a liability. My brother died because of Bloodridge wolves while Timothy was off playing businessman in the city. Now we have a human Luna who knows nothing about our world. It's a recipe for disaster." His words stung, but I understood his pain. "I'm sorry about your brother," I said sincerely. "I can't imagine how hard that must be. But I'm not here to replace anyone or cause trouble. I love Timothy, and I want to protect this pack as much as you do." Derek snorted. "Love won't stop a silver bullet." "Maybe not," I replied, meeting his gaze steadily. "But it gives me strength to learn and fight. Give me a chance to prove myself." For a moment, something like respect flickered in his eyes, but it was quickly replaced by his usual coldness. "We'll see," he muttered, before turning on his heel and walking away. I sighed and leaned against the wall, feeling drained. Strong arms wrapped around me from behind, and Timothy's familiar scent enveloped me. "You handled that well," he murmured into my hair. I turned in his embrace and buried my face in his chest. "It's exhausting trying to win everyone over." He lifted my chin with a finger. "You don't have to win them over. You just have to be yourself. They'll come around eventually." He kissed me gently. "Come on, let's get some fresh air." He led me upstairs to our private balcony overlooking the forest. The night air was cool and crisp, stars twinkling overhead. Timothy pulled me close, his hands roaming possessively over my body. "You were amazing today," he whispered against my neck. Standing up to Derek like that. I shivered as his lips trailed down my throat. "I just want to be worthy of you." He growled low in his throat. "You are more than worthy." His mouth captured mine in a searing kiss that left me breathless. Our clothes seemed to disappear as if by magic, or rather by Timothy's impatient hands tearing them away. Soon we were both naked under the moonlight, skin glowing pale against the darkness. Timothy backed me against the balcony railing, his hands gripping my hips tightly. "Look at you," he breathed, eyes raking over me hungrily. "My perfect mate." He dropped to his knees and spread my legs wide, his tongue diving straight for my core. I cried out as he licked and sucked at my clit, fingers plunging inside me with expert precision. The cool metal of the railing pressed into my backside as I arched into his face, desperate for more. "Timothy, please," I begged. He stood abruptly and lifted me onto the railing, positioning himself at my entrance. "Hold on tight," he commanded. I wrapped my arms around his neck and my legs around his waist, just as he thrust up into me in one smooth motion. The force of it made me gasp. He filled me completely, stretching me deliciously. He set a brutal pace, slamming into me over and over, while supporting my weight effortlessly. Each thrust sent jolts of pleasure through my entire body. I could feel myself climbing higher and higher toward climax. "You're mine," he growled, punctuating each word with a thrust. "Say it." "I'm yours," I moaned. "Again." "Yours. Always yours." With a roar, Timothy buried himself deep and came, his hot seed flooding me. The sensation pushed me over the edge. My orgasm crashed over me like a tidal wave, leaving me trembling and clinging to him for dear life. We stayed like that for several moments, panting heavily, until he carefully lifted me off the railing and carried me inside to bed. As we lay tangled together under the sheets, Timothy stroked my hair soothingly. "No matter what happens," he said softly, "we face it together." I snuggled closer, feeling safe in his arms despite all the uncertainty ahead. Together. The days leading up to the full moon were a blur of restless energy. My body felt like a live wire, every sense heightened to an almost unbearable degree. Sounds were sharper, smells more intense, and my emotions swung wildly from excitement to fear. Timothy had explained that these were normal signs of my impending first shift, but knowing that didn't make it any easier. I spent most of my time training with Sarah or practicing control techniques with Timothy. The pack had grown more accepting of me since the meeting, especially after I'd stood up to Derek. He still kept his distance, but I caught him watching me sometimes with something like respect in his eyes. On the morning of the full moon, I woke with a start, my skin prickling as if 1,000 ants were crawling beneath it. Timothy was already awake, propped up on one elbow watching me. "How do you feel?" he asked softly. "Like I'm about to jump out of my skin," I admitted, sitting up and running my hands through my tangled hair. He pulled me into his arms and kissed the top of my head. "It'll be over soon. Once you shift, you'll feel much better." I nodded against his chest, taking comfort in his steady heartbeat. What if something goes wrong? What if I can't shift back? Timothy tilted my chin up so I could see his eyes. "That won't happen. I'll be with you every step of the way." His confidence soothed my nerves somewhat, but the anxiety remained like a knot in my stomach. We spent the day quietly, avoiding any strenuous activity. Timothy took me for a walk around the estate, pointing out various plants and wildlife, trying to distract me. It worked for a while, but as the sun began to set, the prickling sensation intensified until I felt like I was burning from the inside out. "It's time," Timothy said, as we stood on the back porch watching the sky turn orange and pink. He led me into the forest, following a well-worn path. We walked in silence, hand in hand, until we reached a large clearing surrounded by tall trees. The rest of the pack was already there, many already in wolf form, a sea of fur ranging from dark brown to grey to black. They parted to let us through, their eyes glowing in the gathering dusk. Sarah approached us in human form, wearing a simple dress. She gave me an encouraging smile. "You'll do great, Luna." "Thanks," I managed, my throat dry. Timothy squeezed my hand. "Remember what I told you. Let the change happen naturally. Don't fight it. That will only cause more pain." I nodded, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst from my chest. He stepped back and began to undress. I did the same, my fingers trembling as I removed my clothes. Naked under the open sky, I felt vulnerable but also strangely free. Timothy shifted first. His transformation was swift and graceful, bones cracking, muscles reshaping, fur sprouting, until a massive black wolf stood before me, golden eyes fixed on mine. He padded over and nuzzled my hand reassuringly. I took a deep breath and closed my eyes, focusing on the energy coursing through me. At first, nothing happened. Then a wave of pain crashed over me so intense I cried out. My bones felt like they were breaking and reforming. My skin stretched and itched as fur pushed through. I fell to all fours, gasping for air as the world spun around me. But just as quickly as it started, the pain subsided, replaced by an exhilarating sense of power and freedom. I opened my eyes and gasped at the clarity of my vision. Colours were more vibrant, details sharper. I looked down at myself and saw white fur covering my paws. I was a wolf. Timothy's wolf approached, his tail wagging slightly. He nudged me playfully, then turned and bounded toward the trees. The pack followed, and so did I. Running on 4 legs felt natural, as if I'd been doing it all my life. The wind rushed through my fur, carrying scents of pine, earth, and other wolves. I could hear every rustle of leaves, every snap of twigs beneath our paws. It was intoxicating. We ran for what felt like hours, weaving through the forest, jumping over streams, chasing each other in a joyful display of primal energy. For the first time since arriving at the estate, I truly felt like part of the pack. Eventually we returned to the clearing, panting but exhilarated. Timothy shifted back to human form and helped me shift as well. The transformation back was less painful, almost like shedding a heavy coat. Naked and breathless, I threw my arms around Timothy's neck and kissed him deeply. He responded eagerly, his hands roaming over my body. Around us, other pack members were shifting back and donning clothes, but I barely noticed them. All I could think about was how alive I felt, how connected to Timothy and to nature. He broke the kiss and whispered against my lips, "Let's go somewhere private." Taking my hand, he led me deeper into the woods until we reached a small glade bathed in moonlight. A soft bed of moss lay beneath a canopy of stars. Timothy laid me down gently and hovered above me, his eyes dark with desire. "You were amazing," he murmured, before capturing my mouth again. His kiss was hungry, demanding. I responded in kind, tangling my fingers in his hair and pulling him closer. Our bodies pressed together, skin against skin, still warm from the run. He trailed kisses down my neck to my breasts, taking one nipple into his mouth and sucking hard, while his hand cupped the other. I arched into him, moaning at the dual sensations. His mouth continued its descent, leaving a trail of fire across my stomach until he reached my core. He spread my legs wide and buried his face between them without warning. His tongue flicked over my clit expertly, sending shocks of pleasure through me. "Timothy!" I cried out, my hips bucking against his mouth. He added 2 fingers inside me, curling them upward to stroke that sweet spot, while his tongue continued its assault on my clit. The build-up was swift and intense. Within minutes I was hurtling toward orgasm. "Come for me," he growled against my sensitive flesh. And I did, my body convulsing as wave after wave of ecstasy crashed over me. Before I could recover, Timothy positioned himself between my legs and thrust into me in one smooth motion. I gasped at the sudden fullness, wrapping my legs around his waist to pull him deeper. He set a fierce pace, each thrust hitting just the right spot. The moss beneath us cushioned our movements as we moved together under the moonlight. "You're mine," he growled, his voice rough with passion. "Mine forever." "Yours," I panted back. "Always yours." His thrusts became more erratic as he neared his peak. I could feel my own second orgasm building, coiling tighter with every movement. "Look at me," he commanded. I opened my eyes. I hadn't realized I'd closed them, and met his gaze. The love and possessiveness there sent me over the edge again, just as he slammed into me one last time and came with a roar that echoed through the trees. We collapsed together, spent and breathless. Timothy rolled onto his back, taking me with him so that I lay sprawled across his chest. For a long while we just listened to the sounds of the forest and each other's breathing. "That was incredible," I said finally. He chuckled softly. "You're incredible." He kissed my forehead. "Ready to go back?" I nodded reluctantly. I could have stayed there forever. We dressed quickly and made our way back to the mansion hand in hand. As we entered our bedroom, Timothy pulled me close for another kiss. "Welcome to the pack, Luna," he whispered against my lips. I smiled up at him, feeling more content than I ever had before. That night we slept soundly, wrapped in each other's arms, and for the first time since arriving at the estate, I dreamed not of danger or uncertainty, but of running free through endless forests with my mate by my side.
The night was quiet, the moon high and full, casting a silver glow through the bedroom window. I lay beside Martha, her naked body pressed against mine, both of us sated from earlier lovemaking. Her breathing was slow and even, a slight smile playing on her lips as she dreamed. I brushed a strand of hair from her face, marveling at how far she had come, from a human outsider to my fierce Luna, now a werewolf in her own right. Suddenly the peace shattered as alarms blared throughout the mansion, the piercing sound signaling an attack. I was out of bed in an instant, pulling on pants and a shirt. Martha jerked awake, eyes wide with alarm. "What's happening?" she asked, already scrambling for her clothes. "Bloodridge," I growled. "They've crossed the border. Get dressed. I'll assemble the warriors." She nodded, pulling on her combat gear with practiced efficiency. We had trained for this moment, but nothing could truly prepare her for the reality of battle. Downstairs, the pack was already gathering in the great hall. Warriors shifted restlessly, some already in wolf form, others gripping weapons. Sarah stood at the front, barking orders. "Alpha," she said when she saw me. "A patrol was ambushed on the eastern border. They're outnumbered." "Gather everyone who can fight," I commanded. "We ride out immediately." Martha appeared at my side, her face set with determination. "I'm coming with you." I turned to her, about to protest, but the fire in her eyes stopped me. She was my Luna, and she had proven herself capable. Still, fear for her safety clawed at my gut. "You will stay close to Sarah at all times," I said sternly. "Do not engage unless necessary, understand?" She nodded. "I understand." I cupped her face and kissed her hard. "Be careful." We moved quickly to the stables where horses were saddled and ready. I preferred to shift and run, but for speed over distance, horses were necessary to conserve energy for the fight ahead. Martha mounted gracefully beside me, Sarah on her other side. With a shout, we galloped into the night. The forest rushed past in a blur of shadows and moonlight. The scent of blood and fear grew stronger as we neared the battle site. I could hear snarls and yelps, the sounds of wolves fighting. We dismounted a short distance away and shifted. The transformation was quick and painless. My bones cracked and fur sprouted as I dropped to all fours. Beside me, Martha shifted into her beautiful white wolf form, her golden eyes meeting mine with fierce resolve. "Stay with Sarah," I mind-linked her. though our bond wasn't strong enough for telepathy yet. Only emotions. She seemed to understand, moving to flank Sarah's gray wolf. Together we surged forward into the chaos. The clearing was a maelstrom of fur and fangs. Our warriors were outnumbered but holding their ground. I leapt into the fray, my jaws clamping down on a Bloodridge wolf's throat, tearing it out before moving to the next enemy. Through the haze of battle, I kept one eye on Martha. She fought bravely, dodging attacks and lunging at opponents with surprising skill. Sarah stayed close, guarding her flank. Then I saw it. A young warrior, Ethan, barely 16, was pinned by a massive black Bloodridge wolf. The beast reared back, ready to deliver a killing blow. Before I could react, a white blur shot across the clearing. Martha tackled the attacker with such force that they tumbled away in a tangle of limbs. She ripped into its shoulder, causing it to howl in pain. Ethan scrambled to his feet and joined another fight. My heart swelled with pride even as fear spiked through me. Martha was holding her own, but the black wolf was larger and more experienced. It managed to throw her off and lunged for her throat. I raced toward them, but Sarah got there first, slamming into the black wolf's side and biting deep into its hind leg. Martha seized the opportunity and clamped her jaws around its neck, shaking violently until it went limp. The tide turned quickly after that. Seeing their comrades fall, the remaining Bloodridge wolves broke and fled into the forest. We let them go. Chasing them into unknown territory was too risky. As the adrenaline faded, I shifted back to human form and rushed to Martha's side. She shifted as well, covered in dirt and blood, but otherwise unharmed. "Are you all right?" I asked, pulling her into my arms. She nodded breathlessly. "I'm fine. That was intense." I kissed her forehead, then turned to address the pack. "Tend to the wounded. We'll take our dead home for proper rites." The mood was somber as we gathered our fallen. 3 good warriors lost today, but we had driven off the enemy and protected our territory. Back at the mansion, we cleaned up and tended to injuries. Martha helped bandage cuts and comfort those in shock. Her compassion only deepened my love for her. Finally, we retired to our bedroom. The moment the door closed behind us, I pulled her into a fierce embrace. "You were incredible out there," I murmured against her hair. "Saving Ethan like that. You amaze me every day." She looked up at me, eyes shining. "I couldn't let him die." "I know." I cupped her face and kissed her softly. "But now it's time for me to show you just how proud I am." I led her to the bed and began undressing her slowly, savoring every inch of skin revealed. She stood still, watching me with desire darkening her eyes. When she was completely naked, I laid her down on the sheets and knelt between her legs. Starting at her ankles, I placed feather-light kisses up her calves, behind her knees, along her inner thighs. She squirmed, already wet for me. "Timothy," she breathed. "Shh," I said, blowing cool air over her soaked core. "Let me worship you." I spread her folds with my thumbs and licked a long stripe from her entrance to her clit. She gasped, arching off the bed. I teased her mercilessly, sucking her clit, thrusting my tongue inside her, then circling with just the tip. Her moans grew louder, filling the room. When I added 2 fingers, curling them upward to stroke that sweet spot, she came with a cry, her juices coating my chin. But I wasn't done. I continued licking and fingering her through her orgasm until she was begging for more. "Please, I need you inside me," she pleaded. I removed my clothes quickly and positioned myself at her entrance. "Look at me," I commanded. Her eyes met mine as I pushed in slowly, inch by inch, until I was fully seated inside her warmth. We moved together in a slow rhythm, our bodies still buzzing from the battle. Each thrust was deep and deliberate, designed to bring us both to the edge. I reached between us to rub her clit in time with my movements, and soon she was clenching around me again, her second orgasm washing over her like a wave. That pushed me over. With a groan, I spilled myself deep inside her, my hips stuttering against hers. We collapsed together, sweaty and spent. I held her close, whispering praises into her hair until we both drifted off to sleep. The war was far from over, but in that moment we had each other. And that was enough. The days following the Bloodridge attack were a blur of activity. The pack buried their dead with solemn ceremony, tended to the wounded, and fortified the borders. Martha had proven herself not only as a fighter but as a compassionate leader, comforting grieving families and working alongside everyone to rebuild morale. My pride in her grew with each passing hour. Now, as I stood on the mansion's front steps watching the sunset, a sense of foreboding settled over me. The air was too still, the forest too quiet. Something was coming. A rustle in the trees caught my attention, and a moment later a lone figure emerged from the shadows. He wore the dark leathers of a Bloodridge warrior, but his hands were raised in a gesture of truce. I recognized him, one of Victor's enforcers, a wiry man with a scar across his cheek. "Alpha Timothy," he called, stopping a respectful distance away. I brought a message from Alpha Victor. I descended the steps slowly, my muscles coiled. Behind me, Sarah and Derek moved into position, ready to intervene if needed. "Speak," I commanded. The messenger cleared his throat. "Alpha Victor demands that you hand over the human, Martha, to him. If you comply, he will cease hostilities and allow your pack to live in peace. If you refuse, he will launch a full-scale war and wipe your pack from this territory." Rage boiled inside me, hot and immediate. My wolf snarled, urging me to rip the messenger's throat out for daring to threaten my mate. But I held back. Killing an envoy under a flag of truce would be dishonorable, and I needed to send a clear message. "Tell Victor," I said through gritted teeth, "that Martha is my mate and my Luna. She is not a bargaining chip. If he wants her, he'll have to come through me and every member of my pack to get her. We will never surrender." The messenger's eyes widened slightly at my vehemence, but he nodded. "I will deliver your answer." He hesitated, then added, "He won't take this well. He's already amassing his forces." "Let him come," I growled. "We'll be ready." With that, the messenger turned and disappeared back into the forest. I turned to Sarah and Derek, who wore matching expressions of determination. "Call a pack meeting," I ordered. "We prepare for war." The meeting hall was packed with every adult member of the pack. I stood at the front with Martha beside me, her hand clasped tightly in mine. "Bloodridge has issued an ultimatum," I announced, my voice carrying through the room. "They demand we hand over our Luna." A collective growl rose from the crowd. "I have refused. Victor will attack soon, and we must be ready to defend our home, our families, and our future." There were shouts of agreement, fists pounding on tables. Martha stepped forward. "I know many of you still have doubts about me," she said, her voice steady. "But I am one of you now, and I will fight alongside you until my last breath. We will not let them win." The room erupted in cheers and howls. Even Derek, who had once been so hostile, nodded approvingly. After laying out plans for patrols, defenses, and battle strategies, I dismissed the assembly to begin preparations. As the hall emptied, Martha turned to me. "We need to train harder," she said. "I want to be ready for whatever they throw at us." I kissed her forehead. "You already are, but we'll train together tomorrow." The next morning found us on the training grounds. Martha sparred with Sarah while I watched, offering pointers. She moved with grace and strength, her white wolf speed evident even in human form. It was hard to believe she had only been a werewolf for a few weeks. During a break, Martha picked up a dagger to practice knife work. As she twirled it expertly, the blade slipped and sliced across her palm. She hissed in pain, dropping the weapon. I rushed over, but before I could even reach her, the cut began to close before my eyes. Within seconds, the wound had completely healed, leaving only a smear of blood. Martha stared at her hand in amazement. "Did you see that?" she breathed. I took her hand and examined it. Not a trace remained. "Rapid healing," I said, unable to hide my grin. "That's an advanced ability even for werewolves. You must be tapping into your alpha bloodline." Her eyes lit up. "Really? That's incredible." "It is," I agreed, pulling her into a hug. "You're becoming stronger every day, my love." She beamed up at me. "This could be useful in battle." "Very," I said, then kissed her deeply, not caring that we had an audience. The rest of the day passed in a flurry of activity. By nightfall, exhaustion weighed on us both, but the tension of impending war kept us on edge. That evening, after a late dinner with the pack leaders, Martha and I retreated to our bedroom. The moment the door closed behind us, she sagged against me. "I'm so tired," she murmured. I wrapped my arms around her. "You've done more than anyone could ask for." She looked up at me, her eyes filled with worry. "Timothy, what if we lose? What if Victor—" I placed a finger over her lips. "We won't lose. We have each other and we have the pack. But no matter what happens, I will protect you with my life." Tears glistened in her eyes. "I know. And I'll protect you too." The raw emotion in her voice undid me. I captured her mouth in a searing kiss, pouring all my love and fear and determination into it. She responded instantly, her hands tangling in my hair. We stumbled toward the bed, shedding clothes as we went. When we were both naked, I laid her down gently and hovered above her. "I need you," I whispered against her skin. "I need you too," she gasped as my lips trailed down her neck to her breasts. After a few minutes of comfortable silence, Martha spoke softly. "No matter what happens tomorrow or the next day, I love you." I kissed the top of her head. "I love you more than anything, and we will survive this." We fell asleep entwined, our hearts beating as one. The next morning brought news from our scouts. Victor's army was on the move. War was imminent. But as I looked at Martha standing beside me on the battlefield, her eyes fierce and her healing ability now a part of her arsenal, I knew we stood a chance. Together we would face whatever came and we would win. The days leading up to the inevitable confrontation with Bloodridge were tense but strangely calm. We knew Victor was gathering his forces. Our scouts reported increased activity along the border, but no direct attacks yet. It felt like the entire pack was holding its breath, waiting for the storm to break. I decided we needed a moment of respite, a chance to forget the coming war, if only for a few hours. So I arranged a private dinner for Martha and me on the balcony overlooking the gardens. Agnes outdid herself. Roasted lamb with herbs, fresh vegetables from the garden, and a rich chocolate dessert. A bottle of our finest red wine completed the meal. As dusk settled, I led Martha outside. She wore a simple blue dress that hugged her curves and made her eyes sparkle. She looked stunning. "What's all this?" she asked, smiling as she took in the candlelit table. "A date," I said, pulling out her chair. "We haven't had much time alone lately." She sat and I took my place across from her. For a while we ate in comfortable silence, enjoying the food and each other's company. Then we talked about everything except war. We reminisced about our first meeting in the city, laughed at memories of her clumsy attempts at cooking early on, and dreamed about the future. Children running through the halls of the mansion. Peace with neighboring packs. Maybe even traveling together once all this was over. After dessert, I stood and offered my hand. "Dance with me." She rose gracefully into my arms. There was no music except the rustle of leaves and distant crickets, but we swayed together under the stars as if an orchestra played just for us. Her head rested on my shoulder and I breathed in her scent, vanilla and wildflowers, committing it to memory. This moment felt fragile, precious. Eventually we stopped dancing and just held each other. My hand cupped her face as I leaned down to kiss her, softly at first, then deeper, pouring all my love into it. When we broke apart, she looked up at me with such trust and adoration that my heart clenched. "I love you," she said. "I love you too," I replied hoarsely, pulling her closer for another kiss. Our lovemaking was slow and sensual this time, a contrast to the frantic passion of previous nights. I took my time exploring every inch of her body with my hands and mouth, making her writhe and moan beneath me. When I finally entered her, it was with excruciating slowness, letting her feel every inch as I sank inside. She wrapped her legs around my waist, urging me deeper. We moved together in a rhythm that was almost lazy but no less intense. Each thrust was deliberate, each kiss lingering. I wanted to memorize the feel of her around me, the way her breath hitched when I hit just the right spot, the taste of her skin. Martha came first with a soft cry, her inner walls fluttering around me. I followed soon after, spilling myself inside her with a groan that was more relief than release. Afterward, we lay tangled together, our bodies still connected. I brushed sweaty hair from her forehead and kissed her nose. "Whatever happens tomorrow," I said softly, "know that you are my everything." She nodded against my chest. "And you are mine." We drifted off to sleep in each other's arms. The night had been perfect. After our intimate dinner under the stars and the slow, sensual lovemaking that followed, Martha slept peacefully in my arms. I held her close, listening to her steady breathing, feeling her warmth against my chest. For a few precious hours, the threat of war seemed distant. But peace never lasts long in our world. The alarm shattered the stillness like a gunshot. I was awake instantly, adrenaline surging. Martha jolted upright beside me, her eyes wide with alarm. "What's happening?" she asked, already scrambling out of bed. "Attack," I growled, pulling on pants and boots. "Bloodridge." She reached for her own clothes, but I caught her wrist. "No, you stay here, lock the door and barricade yourself. I'll handle this." Her eyes flashed defiance. "I can fight. I'm not helpless." "I know you're not." I cupped her face, forcing her to meet my gaze. "But if something happens to you, I can't risk it. Please, Martha, for me." She hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. "Be careful." I kissed her hard, pouring all my love and fear into it. Then I turned and ran out of the room, shifting as I went. My bones cracked and fur sprouted. By the time I reached the front door, I was a massive black wolf, teeth bared. The scene outside was chaotic. Torches flickered in the darkness, casting eerie shadows on snarling wolves and clashing bodies. My pack was already engaged, Sarah in her wolf form leading a charge against a group of invaders. I howled, rallying them, and plunged into the fray. Bloodridge wolves were everywhere. I tore into them with ruthless efficiency, my jaws snapping necks, my claws ripping flesh. The metallic scent of blood filled the air, mingling with the musk of fear and rage. Through the mind link, Sarah's voice came. "Alpha, they're trying to flank us on the east side." "You hold them," I ordered, ripping out an enemy's throat. "Where's Seraphine?" "Haven't seen her. Wait. There." Sarah's mental shout made me turn. A russet-furred wolf darted through the trees, heading straight for the mansion. Behind her followed 5 other wolves, her personal guard. My heart froze. She's going after Martha. No. Panic clawed at my chest. I had to get to her. "Sarah, hold the line here. I must get to my mate." Without waiting for a reply, I broke away from the battle and sprinted toward the mansion. A Bloodridge wolf lunged at me. I dodged and slammed him into a tree, hearing his spine snap. Another tried to block my path. I ripped out his belly with a swipe of my claws. But they were slowing me down. Every second counted. With a snarl of frustration, I redoubled my efforts, plowing through anyone who dared stand in my way. Finally, I reached the mansion's front steps. The doors hung broken on their hinges. Seraphine had already been here. Inside lay several of my guards. Some were dead, their throats torn out. Others moaned weakly, bleeding from silver-inflicted wounds. The smell of death was thick. I shifted back to human form just long enough to grab a discarded sword from one of my fallen warriors. Then I raced up the stairs, two at a time, following Martha's scent. Fear, anger, desperation. As I neared our bedroom, I heard a scream, Martha's scream. It pierced my soul like a blade. "Timothy!" she cried. I burst through the door, sword raised. The scene before me seared itself into my memory. Seraphine stood in human form, her red hair wild, a silver dagger gleaming in her hand. Martha was backed against the far wall, her eyes wide but defiant. She held a broken chair leg like a club, but it was no match for Silver. "Did you think I was dead? Do you think you can steal what's mine?" Seraphine hissed. "He was supposed to be my mate. You ruined everything." "He was never yours," Martha spat. "He chose me." "Then you'll die for it." Seraphine lunged, dagger aimed straight at Martha's heart. Time seemed to slow. I moved without thought, throwing myself between them. The dagger plunged deep into my chest just above my heart. White-hot agony exploded through my body as the silver poison spread. My legs gave out and I collapsed to the floor, gasping for air. "Timothy!" Martha's scream echoed in my ears. I tried to speak, but only a gurgle came out. Blood filled my mouth. My vision blurred, but I could still see Seraphine's triumphant smirk. "How noble!" she sneered. "But now you'll both die." She raised the dagger again, this time aiming for Martha. But something changed. Martha's eyes began to glow, a brilliant gold that lit up the room like molten sun. Power radiated from her, palpable and terrifying. Her canines elongated and her nails sharpened into claws. "You hurt my mate," she growled, each word dripping with fury. Seraphine took a step back, her confidence faltering. "What the hell are you?" Martha didn't answer. With a feral snarl, she launched herself at Seraphine, moving faster than any werewolf I'd ever seen. She grabbed Seraphine's wrist and twisted. The dagger clattered to the floor. Then she slammed Seraphine against the wall with such force that plaster cracked. I watched helplessly from the floor, my body numb and growing cold. Martha was a whirlwind of rage, clawing, biting, kicking. Seraphine fought back, but she was clearly outmatched. Martha's blows landed with bone-crushing force. Finally, Martha got her hands around Seraphine's throat and lifted her off the ground. "Leave," she hissed, "and never come back. If you ever threaten my pack again, I will rip your heart out." She threw Seraphine toward the window. The glass shattered as Seraphine crashed through it, landing in a heap outside. A moment later, I heard the sound of retreating paws, Seraphine fleeing in wolf form. Martha rushed to my side, her eyes still glowing but now filled with tears. "Timothy, stay with me!" She cradled my head in her lap, applying pressure to the wound with one hand while fumbling for something with the other. "Help! Someone help!" she shouted. But I knew it was too late. The silver was already spreading through my veins. I could feel its burn creeping toward my heart. "Martha," I whispered, reaching up to touch her face, "you were amazing." "Don't talk," she sobbed. "You're going to be fine, just hold on." I wanted to tell her how much I loved her, how proud I was of her, but darkness was closing in. The last thing I saw was her golden eyes staring down at me, full of love and fear. Then everything went black. Consciousness returned in a slow, painful trickle. I felt as if I were dragging myself up from the bottom of a deep, dark well. My body was leaden, every muscle protesting the slightest thought of movement. A dull, throbbing ache radiated from my chest, each breath sending a sharp reminder of the injury that had nearly taken my life. I opened my eyes, blinking against the soft glow of lamplight. The room was unfamiliar at first. White walls, medical equipment beeping quietly in the corner, the sterile scent of antiseptic. Then memory flooded back. The battle, Seraphine, the silver dagger plunging into my chest, Martha's eyes glowing gold as she fought like a fury. Martha, where was she? Had she been hurt? Panic gave me the strength to turn my head, and there she was. She sat slumped in a chair beside my bed, her hand clasping mine, her head resting on the edge of the mattress. Even in sleep, she looked exhausted. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her usually vibrant hair hung limp and tangled. She wore the same clothes she'd had on during the attack, jeans and a t-shirt stained with dirt and blood, as if she hadn't left my side for days. My heart clenched, my brave, beautiful mate. I tried to lift my free hand to touch her hair, but my arm felt like it weighed a ton. The slight movement made me wince, and Martha stirred. Her eyes fluttered open, and for a moment they were clouded with confusion and fear. Then she saw me watching her, and her entire face transformed. "Timothy!" She sat up, squeezing my hand. "You're awake." Her voice was hoarse, as if she'd been crying or shouting. Tears welled in her eyes, but she smiled, a radiant smile that lit up the room. "Water," I croaked, my throat parched. She reached for a pitcher on the bedside table, poured a glass, and held the straw to my lips. I drank greedily, the cool liquid soothing the raw ache. "How long?" I asked when I could speak again. 3 days, Martha said, setting the glass aside. "The healers weren't sure you'd make it. The dagger was laced with silver, and it was so close to your heart." Her voice broke, and she pressed her lips together, fighting back tears. I lifted my hand, this time with more success, and cupped her cheek. "I'm here, thanks to you." She leaned into my touch, closing her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, they were filled with a mixture of relief and sorrow. "What happened after I fell?" I asked. Martha took a deep breath, composing herself. "You saved me. You took the dagger for me." She swallowed hard. "After you went down, something changed. I felt this surge of power like nothing I've ever experienced. My eyes started glowing, and I could see everything so clearly. I fought Seraphine off. I don't even remember half of what I did, but I drove her out. Then I ran outside and rallied the pack. We pushed Bloodridge back. Victor retreated once he realized Seraphine had failed." Her voice dropped. "We lost some good members, though. Ethan was badly wounded, but he'll recover. Derek took a silver bullet to the leg, but he's healing. And we lost James and Lila." She blinked rapidly, trying to keep the tears at bay. My chest tightened with grief. James and Lila had been loyal warriors, young and full of promise. "They will be honored," I said quietly. "But you were incredible, my Luna. You led them. You saved us all." Martha shook her head. "I didn't know what I was doing. It was like instinct took over. I've never felt so strong, so fast. It scared me. I was terrified of losing you. But you didn't lose me. I'm right here." I tried to sit up, but a jolt of pain stopped me. "Don't move," Martha said, pressing me gently back against the pillows. "You need to rest. Your body is still healing." I sighed, feeling the weakness in my limbs. I hated being confined, but I knew she was right. "Have you been here the whole time?" She nodded. "I couldn't leave you. Sarah and Derek handled the pack, and the healers kept checking on you. I needed to be here." "You should rest too," I said, noting the deep lines of fatigue on her face. "I will, now that you're awake." She smiled, but there was a hunger in her eyes that had nothing to do with sleep. I felt it too, a need that went beyond the physical, a primal urge to reaffirm our bond, to feel her alive and whole against me. I reached for her, my hand sliding behind her neck, pulling her down for a kiss. Our lips met, soft and tentative at first, then deepening as the emotions of the past days poured into the connection. Martha moaned softly, her fingers tangling in my hair. The kiss was a balm to my soul, washing away the shadows of death and fear. When we finally broke apart, both were breathless. Martha's cheeks were flushed, her eyes dark with desire. "We shouldn't," she whispered, even as she leaned in for another kiss. "You're injured." "I need you," I said, my voice rough with longing. "I need to feel you, to know this is real." She hesitated, her gaze flicking to the bandages covering my chest. "But your wound—" "I'll be careful. You can do all the work," I added with a weak grin. Martha bit her lip, considering. Then, with a resolve that made my heart swell, she stood and locked the infirmary door. When she returned to the bed, she began to undress, her movements slow and deliberate. I watched, my breath catching as each inch of her skin was revealed. She was perfection. Full breasts, narrow waist, the curve of her hips. The soft lamplight cast a golden glow over her body, highlighting the strength and grace that had saved us all. When she was naked, she helped me remove my hospital gown, careful not to disturb the bandages. My body was still weak, but my arousal was evident, standing proud and eager for her. Martha climbed onto the bed, straddling my hips, her thighs on either side of me. She leaned down, capturing my lips in a searing kiss as her hand wrapped around my length, stroking me slowly. "I love you," she whispered against my mouth. "More than anything." "I love you too," I gasped as she guided me to her entrance. "Always." With excruciating slowness, she lowered herself onto me, taking me inch by inch into her warmth. I groaned, my head falling back against the pillow. The sensation was overwhelming. Her tightness, the wet heat enveloping me, the connection of our bodies and souls. Once I was fully sheathed, Martha paused, letting us both adjust. She gazed down at me, her eyes glowing with love and a hint of that golden power. "You're mine," she said fiercely. "And you're mine," I replied, my hands settling on her hips. She began to move, rocking gently at first, then increasing the pace as pleasure built. I matched her rhythm, thrusting upward as much as my weakened state allowed, each movement sending sparks of ecstasy through my veins. The pain in my chest was a distant echo, drowned out by the intensity of our union. Our breaths mingled, soft moans and whispered promises filling the room. I could feel my climax approaching, coiling deep in my belly. I reached between us, finding her clit and rubbing circles with my thumb. Martha cried out, her inner walls fluttering around me. "Come with me," I urged, my voice strained. She nodded, her movements becoming more frantic. "Timothy, oh gods!" Her orgasm hit her like a wave, and she threw her head back, a long, keening cry escaping her lips. The sight of her falling apart above me, combined with the exquisite pressure of her contractions, pushed me over the edge. I spilled into her with a guttural groan, my hips bucking involuntarily as I emptied myself. For a moment we stayed locked together, panting, hearts racing as one. Then Martha carefully lifted herself off me and curled up at my side, mindful of my injury. She rested her head on my shoulder, her hand splayed over my heart. I wrapped an arm around her, pulling her close. The warmth of her body, the steady beat of her heart grounded me. I pressed a kiss to her forehead. "We'll get through this," I murmured. "Together." Martha nodded, her eyes already drifting closed. "Together," she echoed. As sleep claimed us both, I felt a peace I hadn't known in days. We had faced death and emerged stronger. The road ahead would be hard. Victor and Seraphine were still out there, the pack needed rebuilding, and Martha's newfound powers would bring new challenges. But with my mate by my side, I knew we could overcome anything. For now we had this moment. Two hearts, one soul, bound by love and sacrifice. The sun was high in the sky as I stepped out onto the balcony, taking a deep breath of fresh forest air. 3 days had passed since I'd woken in the infirmary, and each day my strength returned a little more. The wound on my chest was now a pink scar, a reminder of how close I'd come to death, and of Martha's power that had saved me. Below, the pack grounds buzzed with activity. Warriors trained, builders repaired damaged structures, and children played under the watchful eyes of their mothers. At the center of it all was Martha, my Luna, her hair tied back in a practical ponytail as she directed the rebuilding efforts. I watched with pride as she moved from group to group, offering encouragement, making decisions, and occasionally settling disputes. She had stepped into her role with a natural authority that even the most seasoned warriors respected. I made my way down to join her. As I approached, I overheard two pack members arguing loudly. "The fence needs to be rebuilt first," insisted Jake, a burly one. "We can't leave ourselves exposed." "My family's home is barely standing," countered Joel, his face red. "We need shelter before winter." Martha stepped between them, her presence immediately calming the tension. "Both of you have valid concerns," she said, her voice firm but kind. "We'll divide our resources. Half the builders will work on the perimeter fence during the day, the other half on homes. At night, we'll have extra patrols to compensate for the unfinished fence. And we'll set up temporary shelters for those whose homes are uninhabitable. Does that work?" Jake and Joel exchanged glances, then nodded. "Yes, Luna," they said in unison, their anger dissipating. Martha smiled. "Good. Now get back to work together." As they walked off, already discussing logistics, I came up behind Martha and wrapped my arms around her waist. She leaned back into me with a contented sigh. "You're amazing," I whispered in her ear. She turned and kissed me lightly. "I learned from the best." We spent the rest of the morning walking the grounds, Martha updating me on everything that had happened while I was recovering. The pack had rallied after the attack, but there were still challenges. Supplies were low and morale was fragile. Yet under Martha's leadership, hope was growing. As we passed the kitchen, a young scout named Ryan hurried up to us, his expression grave. "Luna Alpha, may I speak with you in private?" We led him to my office. Once the door was closed, Ryan pulled a crumpled note from his pocket. "I found this near the pantry. I think we have a traitor." Martha took the note and read it aloud. "Next shipment arrives at the usual drop point. Be ready. It's unsigned." She looked up. "Where exactly did you find this?" "In the kitchen under a sack of flour. I've also noticed supplies going missing, food, medicine, even weapons. At first I thought it was just disorganization, but this..." Martha nodded. "Thank you, Ryan. Keep this between us for now. We'll handle it." After Ryan left, Martha turned to me. "We need to set a trap." That night we spread word that a large shipment of medical supplies would be delivered to the storage room. We made sure the information reached every corner of the pack. Then we waited. Just after midnight, a figure slipped into the storage room, a sack in hand. As they began filling it with bandages, we stepped out of the shadows. "Stop right there," Martha commanded, flipping on the lights. The figure froze. It was Thomas, the pack's cook, a man who had served us for years. His face went pale as he dropped the sack and fell to his knees. "Thomas?" Martha's voice softened with surprise. "Why?" Tears streamed down his face. "I'm sorry, Luna. They have my daughter. Bloodridge took her during the attack. They said if I didn't give them information and supplies, they'd kill her. I didn't know what else to do. My heart ached for him. Thomas was a good man forced into betrayal by love for his child." "Why didn't you come to us?" Martha asked gently. "We could have helped." "I was afraid," he sobbed. "They said they'd kill her if I told anyone. I thought if I just obeyed, they'd let her go, but they keep demanding more." Martha glanced at me, her eyes filled with compassion. I knew what she was thinking. We had to save his daughter, but we also had to uphold pack law. Treason was punishable by death. Martha straightened, her voice taking on a formal tone. "Thomas, you have committed treason against the pack. The penalty is death." Thomas flinched, but Martha continued. "However, I understand your motives, and I believe your loyalty to the pack remains, even if your actions were misguided. Therefore, I sentence you to banishment. You must leave our territory by sunrise and never return." Thomas looked up, shock and gratitude warring on his face. "Thank you, Luna. But my daughter?" "We will rescue her," Martha said firmly. "That is my promise to you." Thomas bowed his head. "I will pray for your success." After Thomas was escorted out, Martha turned to me. "We have to get his daughter back." "We will," I assured her. "But first we need to deal with Victor. Once he's gone, we can free all his captives." The next day, scouts brought urgent news. Victor was regrouping his forces and planning another assault within weeks. We couldn't afford to wait for him to strike. That evening, Martha and I met with Sarah and Derek in my office. Maps of Bloodridge territory covered the table. "We can't fight them head on," Derek said. "They outnumber us, especially after our losses." "Then we take out Victor," I said. "Cut off the head and the body will wither." Martha nodded. "A small team could infiltrate their camp, kill Victor, and escape before they know what hit them." Sarah leaned forward. "I'm in. Who else?" "Us four," I said. "We're the strongest fighters and we work well together." Derek grinned. Finally, some action. We spent hours planning the route, timing, and contingencies. The Bloodridge camp was a day's journey away, deep in the forest. We would leave at dusk tomorrow, travel under cover of darkness, and strike just before dawn when the guards were most tired. After Sarah and Derek left, Martha and I remained, the weight of the coming mission settling over us. "I'm coming with you," Martha said, her tone leaving no room for argument. "I wouldn't dream of leaving you behind," I replied, pulling her close. "We're stronger together." She smiled, but there was sadness in her eyes. "After this, we can finally have peace, build our pack, maybe even start a family." I kissed her forehead. "That's a future worth fighting for." We walked hand in hand to our bedroom. The moment the door closed, we came together in a fierce embrace, our bodies merging as we reaffirmed our bond. Afterward, we lay entwined, her head on my chest, my fingers tracing circles on her skin. "Promise me we'll come back," she whispered. "I promise," I said, though I knew promises in war were fragile. "We'll come back and we'll build that future." We held each other until sleep claimed us, our hearts beating as one. The night was deep, the room shrouded in darkness. Martha stirred beside me, her warm body pressed against mine. We had made love earlier, a passionate union that had left us both sated and raw with emotion. Now, in the quiet aftermath, reality loomed. "Timothy?" Her voice was soft, uncertain. "I'm here," I murmured, pulling her closer. "We should go over the plan one more time." I smiled in the darkness. "We've been over it a dozen times." "I know, but it helps me feel in control." So we lay there, whispering the details like a sacred incantation. The route, the timing, the roles each of us would play. Sarah would take out the perimeter guards with silenced shots. Derek would create a diversion if needed. Martha and I would go straight for Victor's tent. If anything went wrong, we'd scatter and meet at the rendezvous point. "We'll leave at dusk," I said. "Travel light and move quickly." Martha nodded against my chest. "And once Victor is dead, we retreat the same way." Silence fell again. I could feel her heart beating in time with mine. "What if we can't kill him?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "Then we fight until our last breath," I said, cupping her face. "But we will succeed. I have faith in us, in our pack." She kissed me then, slow and deep, pouring all her love and fear into it. When we broke apart, she rested her head on my shoulder and we drifted into a fitful sleep. Dawn came too soon and I woke to the sound of birdsong, a cruel contrast to the day ahead. Martha was already up, moving quietly around the room, gathering our gear. She had laid out my black tactical clothes, my favorite dagger, and the silver-coated sword that had been passed down through generations of alphas. I rose and dressed, watching her. She moved with purpose, her jaw set, her eyes focused. She was every bit the warrior queen, and my heart swelled with pride and love. We ate a quick breakfast in silence, then headed to the armory to meet Sarah and Derek. They were already there, checking their weapons. "Ready?" Sarah asked, her usual cheer replaced by steely determination. "Ready," Martha and I said in unison. Derek slung a pack over his shoulder. "Let's end this." We stepped outside where the pack had gathered to see us off. They lined the path, their faces a mix of hope and worry. Children clung to their parents, elders offered blessings. It was a solemn procession. At the edge of the forest, we turned to face them. Martha raised her voice. "We go to secure our future. Hold the fort while we're gone. We'll return victorious." A cheer rose, but it was muted, as if they feared jinxing our mission. I clasped hands with a few of the warriors, exchanging nods of respect. Then we turned and disappeared into the trees. The forest was alive with the sounds of twilight, crickets, rustling leaves, the distant hoot of an owl. We moved silently, single file, with Sarah taking point and Derek bringing up the rear. Martha walked beside me, her hand occasionally brushing mine, a silent reminder of our bond. As darkness deepened, we picked up the pace. The miles fell away beneath our feet, our werewolf stamina allowing us to maintain a steady jog. We avoided main paths, sticking to the underbrush where our scent would be harder to trace. Around midnight, we reached the edge of Bloodridge territory. We paused to catch our breath and assess. The camp was about a mile ahead, hidden in a valley. We could see the faint glow of fires through the trees. "Right on schedule," Sarah whispered. We crept closer, using every bit of cover. At a ridge overlooking the camp, we lay flat and observed. Tents sprawled in a haphazard pattern, with Victor's larger tent unmistakable in the center. Guards patrolled the perimeter, but their movements were sluggish. The late hour was taking its toll. "Shift change in 20 minutes, Derek noted, checking his watch. We waited, our nerves taut. The plan was simple. When the new guards arrived, there would be a few minutes of confusion as they exchanged information. That was our window. I glanced at Martha. Her eyes were fixed on the camp, her jaw set. I reached over and squeezed her hand. She turned to me, and in that moment I saw not fear but determination. We were ready. As the first hints of dawn tinged the horizon, we prepared to move. This was it, the beginning of the end.
In the dark where the silence screams white, I walk through shadows with nowhere to hide. Every whisper of love feels like a dead end, but maybe the night will teach me to mend. You're the ghost that haunts my every thought, a dangerous game with the lessons you taught. Oh, I'm falling for shadows, craving the fight. Two broken souls forging truth from the night. I feel the fire burning deep within. When the dusk surrounds us, that's where we begin. Where we begin. Where we begin. You roam like a phantom, lost in despair. A heart made of ashes, a longing laid bare. I trace the path where memories remain, wrestling with demons, embracing the pain. But when your grip tightens, the world fades away, and in the dark I find a reason to stay. Oh, I'm falling for shadows, craving the fight. Two broken souls forging truth from the night. I feel the fire burning deep within. When the dusk surrounds us, that's where we begin. When your grip tightens, the world fades away, and in the dark I find a reason